Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I thought I would take you on a little bit of a look around peak growing season and follow on from the how to water cactus video that I did a little earlier, well it's quite a few months ago now actually. So we are literally at the very peak of the growing season. Everything is plump and really growing nicely. So it can be a little bit tricky at this time knowing when to water and also how much. And some of the comments that I got on the last video was that you guys wanted a little bit more specific information. And like I've said before, the question of how and when to water cactus is not a straightforward answer. I can't just say to you, water every second Tuesday and every third Wednesday and you'll be fine. It doesn't quite work like that. It is very climate dependent. And also other factors as well, like what soil mix you're using. But anywho, most of my cacti, just a little bit of background, I'd say pretty much all of them nearly, are in a high mineral mix, and that is the lowest that I sort of start at is around a 70 to 30%, and that is 70% gravel or inorganic material and 30% organic, and then it goes all the way up to a 90-10. And I think there might even be a couple in here that are pretty much in a 100% mineral mix, which is a fancy way of saying straight gravel. So that's what I use to pot up. The more rot prone ones will have a higher gravel ratio, and obviously the less they are, or the more water that they need to look good, the more organic matter that I'll put in. So rather than looking at my mug, I'll flip the camera around. I'll take you on a look, a bit of a look around what I'm going to be watering. So without further ado, let's flip this around and I'll show you the interesting thing, and that's the plants. Alright, so just like in the first watering video, this is not going to be a full tour, otherwise it would quite simply take far too long to go through everything. My plants are thankfully fairly grouped, so I'll be able to sort of run you through based on sort of rough sort of variety. So the lobivias, now some of these are looking fantastic. They're really plump and full looking, like this guy here for instance. You can see here he's very full. The body is extremely firm. This is another one of the same type. This one's grown a lot better. So you can see he's incredibly stout. He's very full of water. So this guy here did not get a drink this time around. Same as this guy here, you can see that beautiful juicy green. He's plump, he's covered in pups, but he doesn't need any water. You're not going to achieve anything by watering a cactus that looks like this or like this. It's not going to serve any purpose. They're already as full as they're going to get. Some that have been watered is this guy here. I've been treating this one a little bit more kindly because he's hasn't grown terribly well for many years now, so I'm going to try and do a bit more of a high risk style of growing, and that is heavy water, heavy food, just to get him to pump through, and he's slowly making that comeback. This guy here, not looking great. He's not very full, so he actually got watered as well. Looking through here, now this guy here as an example is not looking terribly good, but that's a Rubutia pygmaei, and they have a monstrous taproot, so you always need to be careful with plants that have taproots because they have a tendency to rot if you don't keep them happy or if you overwater them. So very much one you can kill with kindness. These two here, they are quite plump, but I will still water them because these are only about a year old. These are grown from seed. I grew these myself, so they're still not at the point where where I really want them to have to switch on their survival instincts. This coming winter they won't have a choice, but for now I want to try and pack on some size, so I'll run a little bit higher risk. But when they're this young, they are fairly good at taking water on. This guy here, you can quite clearly see how full he is. The spines are all pushed apart. The spines aren't dense anymore because he's holding onto that much water that everything's just spread out crazy. And then the same as this guy here. So Rubutias, and one of my viewers actually asked, do I find that Rubutias grow slowly? I wouldn't say that I find them remarkably slow. There's certainly plenty more other cacti that are slow. I just think that you need to keep them quite firm, and that could mean bi-weekly watering if you want them to grow. Otherwise they get stroppy, like this guy here. pretty soft. So he's sulky and he's just not growing very nicely. So the Rabusias are on a weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, just depending how hot it is. But I stick them onto a weekly schedule, and then occasionally I'll skip out watering, like for this guy here and that one there. The ones that are really, really plump, I'll not water them very much when they're, that full. But on the flip side of that, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky and we're treading into that sort of unclear territory. If she still looks like this a week from now, then I will water. So it's a little bit tricky, but I would say that if she looks like that, I'll skip a week, but then the following week I will give her a drink. And I know that that's really, really confusing, but it's just the way that I do things, and I can sort of only share with you how I do things. Mammillaria, they are on weekly, and there are quite a few Mammillaria that are rot prone, and especially the white spine varieties, which is predominantly what I grow. But I'm not too worried. It's incredibly hot, it's windy, so they'll take a weekly watering. This guy here is a Cactus Maniana or something along those lines. He was on weekly, but he cracked it like you wouldn't believe. Like, he was all shrunken in, his colour wasn't very nice. So he's now on bi-weekly, so that's twice a week I'll water him. And for argument's sake, let's just say it's a Tuesday and a Friday. The days don't matter too much, but I water him twice a week, and he's quite thankful for that. Next season I will actually repot him into a higher organic content mix. He does not like the mix that he's in at the moment. So looking at the sort of, it's a bit mixed at this section, but there's quite a decent amount of Cactus through here, and also Mammillaria. They're all on weekly regime. They'll all take that quite well. And then if I'm looking at smaller plants, so this is a Copiapoa carazolensis. Copiapoa are very rot prone, but when they're small, they have a tendency of sucking up water and not rotting. And so that's why I treat my baby ones, baby Copiapoa, like this one here and this guy here, a little differently. Like this guy here has just been watered a few hours ago. He's still very, very squishy, so I'll be looking at watering him about bi-weekly. So this section back here is predominantly Labivias, Nodocactus, and a few Thalocactus. I'll just show you another example of something not to water. This guy back here. So that's a Thalocactus hexaflorus or something along those lines. He is absolutely full to the brim. You can see by how rigid he is and how bulbous the growth is. And really the only way you're going to know, the difference between your plant looking like this and then say in the middle of winter this guy looks completely different is just through experience and knowing your plants and knowing how their bodies change and how their appearance and coloration and all those sorts of things. It will change, so you need to pay attention to that and know what it looks like when it's had no water and what it looks like when it's nice and full. Moving into here, now this here is the Aereocarpus. Now these guys here are incredibly rot prone, so you need to be very, very careful. These are in a 90-10 mix, and truth be told, it's probably closer to 100% gravel. There's really just the smallest amount of organic matter. But anywho, let's have a look and I'll show you what I will water and what I won't water. I'll start with the ones that I won't water, and it's this guy here. And the camera is not going to pick up, but this guy is very, very plump. He is full to the brim. There's no point watering this cactus. It's not going to achieve anything. He's too full. So this guy here, maybe in 10 days we'll get some water. Same as this guy here. He is starting to wrinkle up now, as it's been about 8 days since he's had a drink. I didn't water him today. And he's just starting to wrinkle now, so he'll get a little bit of a drink in a few days' time. And then we move on to something like this guy here. You can see just how full the body is. He does not need any more to drink. And same as this guy and this guy here. This guy here looks incredible. I pushed this particular cactus a little bit more this season just because I wanted to see what would happen, and he looks incredible, but I'm not sure I'd be quite so risky next season because it is a bit of I run a bit of a risk. This is a Aereocarpus. This guy here, absolutely rock solid, no movement in the body whatsoever, no drink at all. All right, so that's what I'm looking for. The ones that are completely full to the brim, no water. They don't need it. They're incredibly good at storing it, and that's what they're designed to do. So once they're at capacity, you're just throwing water at it for no reason. Same as this guy here, absolutely full to the brim. I couldn't squish that if I tried, so it doesn't need a drink. You don't want to wait for it to fully deflate, but just keep an eye on it. When he shrinks back a little bit, okay, I'll give him a little bit more. And the same as this Aereocarpus. Moving on to the ones that I will water. So it's this guy here. He is quite full, but he got sunburnt, so he's already stressed. So I'll give him a little bit of extra attention and water. And then this little guy in here as well, he'll have some more water. I look for coloration as well. So this guy here, not the nicest color. I know what the body should look like, and it's not like this. This guy here is sort of a off sort of color, and I want more purple or even a little bit of green. So the cycle for Aereocarpus is around 10 to 14 days watering, with the exception of the smaller plants which run more so on the weekly schedule. Now, in terms of the color variants that I was mentioning, this guy here, you can see little bits of green, predominantly purple, but quite a way apart from this guy here, which isn't looking very good. So he's going to be thirsty, probably a little bit sunburnt as well. So this guy here did receive some water just because he's actually just come out of looking like that guy there. So it's for me, it's very much around color, how full they are, and sort of at what stage they're at. You're not going to get a cactus that's in looking like that to looking like that in one water. It's just, they don't do anything, cacti don't generally do anything that quickly. So for what I call traditional gardeners who are used to seeing, say, a plant that's water stressed in terms of it hasn't had enough, it'll go floppy. You can water it and chances are a couple of hours later it's going to perk back up and look incredible. Cacti are much slower, so you have to be patient. You just have to be patient and just look for those changes and understand that things are not going to happen quickly. These bottom ones here, oh, it's very windy. Closer to a weekly schedule. This guy here definitely needs some more to drink. He is not looking good at all. I'm not worried, but he's definitely thirsty. I can tell by the way he looks. If you look at something like Astrophytum, these guys here definitely rot prone as well. Asterias in particular are very rot prone, which is Asterias just here. This guy's sunburnt as well. So for these guys, it's a 10 to 14 day schedule. The graphs, because they're on Trichoceros pachinoi, bi-weekly to weekly, just depending on how the Trichoceros is looking. You can see here this is incredibly full, healthy looking, very full of water. So I'll water when they look like this once a week. You're not going to get too much more by watering them more than that. So graphs, much more so. The ones on Hylocereus, bi-weekly. Hylo does not like drying out for long periods of time, so you need to keep the stock happy and balance that with making sure you don't split the scion. Not so much a problem with Trichoceros and Hylocereus. They're not generally so powerful as to split a scion, but there are other stock plants that will actually split scions. So things like Cereus and also Trichoceros spacianus will split scions. So as an example, I think one of these is actually split. I think it's this guy here. Yeah, as you can see there, he's got a split, and so you'll notice that this stock looks quite different to this one here, and even this one here is a little bit darker and a little bit more shrunken in, and that is because I've intentionally held back the water, because he's already split the scion once, so that's where the balancing act comes into it. Otherwise these guys are bi-weekly, weekly. Smaller pots, weekly, so 7 to 10 days. Larger pots and larger plants, 10 to 14 days is usually enough. There's a very, very talented grower who lives in South Australia, which is the next state over from me, and his recommendation for Astrophytum is to water them, the flowering size plants, every 2 weeks. That's it, straight rule across the board. So you might choose to use that. I'm a little bit more, I sort of look in more on an individual level. All right, and then over here, these are Echinocereus. These are actually very, very drought tolerant plants. I've never killed any by rotting them, but I've heard that it can happen. So these are on weekly. I don't have any reason to stress about them. They're incredibly full, but I'll just water them once a week anyways. They'll take the water, they'll keep pushing through and hopefully push out some flowers. These guys here are some more seedlings, so the first and second two. So we've got Libivia famatomensis and Libivia pampana R446. Their seedlings are only about a year old, so bi-weekly to weekly, just depending on how quickly the mix dries out. Over here, just some mixed bits and pieces, really. But let's scoot around and I'll show you the other side and finish it off. Alrighty, so back with the Gymno Coliseum, probably my all-time favourite cactus family of all time. Now, these guys here, I will water these every single week without fail, regardless of whether they visually look like they need it or not. The worst thing that's going to happen with a Gymno Coliseum is that it will split. I've never had one rot. I will actually increase the water for some if they're not looking too happy. And an example of that is this guy here, which is Gymno Coliseum hyperplurum. He hasn't looked good all season. I pulled him out of the pot because this sort of coloration can be indicative of rot. But I pulled him out of the pot, and what I realised was that all the roots that he had dried out, and he was actually pushing out some new ones. So he needed more water. So he's on bi-weekly. And then there's a couple of others that just weren't looking too happy. This guy here, which is Gymno Coliseum zagare, you can see here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it too well, he's not filling out, his body's not full. It's a little bit sort of drawn in, so bi-weekly for him. On the flip side, if we're talking about a full plant, this guy here, absolutely full to the brim. And loving life. He's got new spines, which you can see that flash of red at the top, but still weekly I'm going to keep him happy. If the biggest risk I'm running is a split plant, I'll accept that risk. If they were rot prone, I wouldn't, but you can see for the most part they are all very full. There's some exceptions, keeping in mind as well that when they flower and produce seed, it is very, very draining on the plant. And so it is quite probable that they will sort of shrink in, lose some colour, lose some vigour. That's to be expected. This guy's an exception. He still shouldn't look like that. I'll have to figure out what's going on with him. But if this wasn't a long-term view appearance, which I know that it is, I would just water more. But this has been ongoing for months now, so I need to look into something further and see what's actually happening with him. But other than that, every single week I water Gymno Coliseum. If it's particularly windy or hot, bi-weekly, so twice a week. Let's say Tuesday and Friday, why not? So again, like I said earlier, it's very much about knowing the family, knowing what they look like, what they like, what they don't like. Gymno Coliseum in their natural environment, the majority of the rainfall falls in the warmer times of the year, and so it makes perfect sense to try and replicate that as much as possible. Through here, some little babies. These two here are seed grown. They're about a year old. Cute as a button. Just want to squeeze their little cheeks. But they're on bi-weekly. They've only just been potted up as well. So, and grafts bi-weekly. So pretty much this whole area is bi-weekly. Looking across here, these are last season's grafts. I had quite a lot of splitting. This guy here, for example, split numerous times. But they seem to have stabilised now. The Aereocarpus is slowing down a little bit, and that is because potentially this winter it will lose all of its leaves. You usually only get around 2 years of leaves before the Aereocarpus just drops them entirely. So that'll slow down the growth. But these are on weekly watering, and that's enough for this size graft and scion size. You definitely don't want them to split at this size, because they're just the bodies are becoming very, very firm at this age, and the skin's thickening up, and they've been, in full sun as well, so they're not as pliable as a fresh graft. So you need to be careful around this time. Across here, looking at the Echinopsis, however you want to say it, it doesn't bother me. These guys here love a drink. I water these all year round. I slow down when it's cold, obviously, but other than that, every 2 to 3 days I will water these guys. And the goal is I want them all to look like this. This guy here is an absolute showpiece of how I think Echinopsis should look. Beautiful, beautiful green, full body, even ribs. It's just, this guy here is remarkable. Beautiful flowers as well, but for the rest of the year, incredible form. And that's the benchmark for me. That's how I want them all to look. They don't all look like that now, but we'll get there. So look, every 2 to 3 days, these guys will not rot. I've never heard of anyone killing them by overwatering them, but they get very, very stroppy when you under. Now onto Lophophora, which I'm sure plenty of people have killed. I've killed them, and everyone I know has killed some. Look, put them into the same group as Aereosis and Astrophytum every 10 to 14 days, never at all when it's cold. And these guys are good because if they'll give you a fairly good indication. I don't mind if there's a little bit of give in the body. That's completely fine for me. I'm not aiming to get these guys rock solid. These particular ones are seed grown, so they've got the full taproot intact, which increases the chance of rot dramatically, as opposed to a D graft, which has a slightly different root structure and you can throw more water at them. I've got some D grafts, but they're hiding under the shade because they were looking ugly because they were getting too much sun. So look, every 10 to 14 days, you will not kill a Lophophora by underwatering them. I can assure you of that. They might disappear under the soil, but they won't die. Aereocarpus. Now these are a little bit tricky. If you underwater them, they will not grow. If you overwater them, then there's a good chance that they will die. The trick to watering Aereocarpus is when you water them deeply. Make sure the entire pot is 100% soaked. So I get the watering can. This guy's only tiny as, if you can see him in there. And I will fill this pot up 2 or 3 times. The water will flow all the way over the top of the plant. I want him to absolutely be drowned. And then in another 10 to 12 days for these guys, I will water them again. So need to water them heavily. These are seed grown, and I'm actually intentionally hard growing these. There's a different method of growing these softly, but these particular two are being hard grown, and this is probably how most people would grow them, is like in this way. So every 10 to 12 days for them. Looking at the grafts now, so the Cereus for Persei, you can see in there he's already split this Lophophora huaceae once. So you need to be careful. For Persei is in a ridiculously strong stock, like very, very strong. So you need to be careful about overwatering, because it'll just keep pumping the poor scion until it splits. This is on Aereocarpus, a very old stalk. This has been grafted for years and years, and bi-weekly. This Aereocarpus isn't strong enough anymore to split the scion. It has in the past, as you can see back there. So it has split it, but it doesn't have that strength anymore. And these two big heads are on Spacianus, which again, the scion size is way too big for the Spacianus to split it anymore. It's not going to be able to produce enough power to make these split. They never have in the past, but at this size it just can't do it. So bi-weekly for these, and also for these, which is the Pachinoi, bi-weekly again. And these guys here, these are on weekly. It's Aereocarpus, Echinocactus, and an odd Parodia back there. I'll just give them once a week. They seem to like that. No splitting, no issues, so they're on once a week. And then I've got a couple of grafts back here, which are Mammillaria Boccasana Fred. These are just fresh grafts, and the grafting stock was never very good quality. Wasn't good quality to begin with. It was sort of a bit stress and whatever else. So at the moment I'm watering it bi-weekly until this fills out a bit more. You can see here the ribs are quite shrunken in, and this guy here is starting to fill out, which is nice. And I'll be a bit more happy when it looks more like this, nice and full, and can keep the scion going. Very unlikely you'll rot Pachinoi as well. I have them growing outside in the middle of winter. It gets rain, they cop a whole lot of rain, and I've never had a healthy one, or even a sick one for that matter, die from overwatering. Alright everyone, look, I hope you found some useful information out of this. Again, I'm sorry I can't just tell you to water your cactus every second Tuesday, but hopefully as I round out this particular series, we do sort of the wind down from the growing season, and then also winter watering, which will be a very short video. Hopefully you can put the pieces together, and it gives you a little bit more of an idea of how to water and when to water cacti. Alright everyone, thanks for watching, and as always, happy gardening. Bye!